We have well over 1 million people, that have signed up as G2 users. Obviously, a lot of them writing reviews. A lot of them also software vendors that are tracking all the data and trends on
Yeah.
G2. And I think, but the interesting thing now is we have every month we have over 6 million software buyers coming to G2.com, and then that's
Yeah.
been growing. And actually, we saw a big surge last year due to COVID. Where all of a sudden everyone, and
Hmm.
obviously all of us in tech, we already had Zoom, we had Slack, we had all these digital
Right.
apps, but most companies didn't. And so over last March and April, we
Yeah.
just saw a tremendous surge, where categories like video conferencing were up 400%. And also what was interesting, some
Yep.
verticals, for example, HIPAA compliant messaging, and HIPAA is a
Yeah.
healthcare privacy standard, but also all of a sudden, there are also all this interest in telemedicine apps. And, so it was really cool to see how G2 could help companies when the pandemic hit to more quickly discover the apps they
Yeah.
need to keep their business running. But then that has continued, because obviously remote work has continued. And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of VCs, like one of our investors is Excel, has invested in amazing companies like
Yep.
Facebook, but also now a lot of B2B leaders like UiPath or, or one of the Jira, Atlassian, and so lots of leading companies. But what they've
Atlassian. Yep.
said is that a lot of 5, 10 year trends have now been accelerated, where all of a sudden these trends were all happening anyway. Businesses were adopting more software, or I love the Mark Andreessen quote, "Software is eating the world." All of that's been accelerated, and so we have also, as a result,
Yep.
seen more people now shopping for software for their business on G2 every month.
Right. So I'd love to understand it. I always think it's so interesting to learn about how companies, eat their own dog food or drink
Mhm.
their own champagne. How does G2 leverage its own, its own expertise in its go-to market? Are you guys really leaning into ABM and leveraging that intent data? And what other data providers are you supplementing with today, just out of curiosity? Because obviously G2 has really good intent, but you also are going to need, just traditional firmographic and contact data attributes. Like what's the recipe
Yeah,
at
and I would
G2
say,
today?
in terms of drinking our own champagne, it starts with encouraging customer reviews. So, we do
Yeah.
have reviews both of G2.com on our marketplace, where software buyers can review how helpful has G2 been to them. And we also have software marketers, software vendors write reviews. I think we have about 400 reviews now for marketers. And we like authentic reviews,
Hmm.
so they're not all 5 star. But we get the good
Right.
feedback where some marketers already love G2, they love our intent data, and others say, hey, in my category, you're not that relevant yet. I'm not seeing enough traffic. And so we get a lot of customer voice, a lot of customer feedback. And that's also what we encourage, all vendors on G2 to embrace the feedback. And actually, one cool story there, we had the Zoom founder, Eric Wan, whom I've known for a few years because we shared an investor in Emergence
Hmm.
Capital. And I remember actually the first Zoom I ever did was when I was pitching Emergence Capital, actually for Steelbrick back in 2014. In fact, at that time, I'm like, but
Nice.
I was like,
Wow.
what's this Zoom thing? Like, why do we need it, right? We
Right.
already have WebEx, GoToMeeting.
WebEx go
But
to
then I
meet.
also got
Right.
to meet Eric,
Exactly.
and his whole vision at the time was delivering happiness. And his strategy was
Yeah.
just to make, web meetings or video conferencing easier and more reliable. And frankly,
Yeah.
when I first met him, I was
Right.
probably skeptical. But, but then
Yeah.
he also right away loved the G2.com vision. And from the beginning, he's encouraged his customers to share reviews. I think today Zoom has, I don't know, 50,000 amazing reviews. And,
Oh wow. Yeah.
but he also really embraced negative reviews. And actually, one of the cool things Eric does, both on G2, if he gets a negative review or if he gets a tweet, customer complaint, he reads all those himself. And he started out as an engineer. So then he makes sure
Yeah.
they always take that customer feedback, engineer the product, make it more reliable, make it even better. And obviously, that's like a spectacular success
Yep.
is, really embracing that customer feedback and then using that customer voice
Yeah.
to amplify your momentum. And so, that's really the first part of drinking our own champagne that we're also embracing at G2 is really embracing that customer voice. And then of course
Yep.
we do also use the buyer intent data because we can also see, like Jamie, if you're all of a sudden lighting up or people at Ringlead all of a sudden lighting up
Yep.
G2 and really spending a lot of time in our marketplace, then that can also trigger outreach,
Yep.
via our Salesforce app where we create the data to say, hey, maybe we should call Jamie because it seems like they're spending
Yeah.
a lot of time on G2.com right now. It might be a great time to educate them on, our marketing solutions.
it's always interesting to me to understand, um, how businesses are leveraging their own expertise. And I think one thing that's great about, looking back historically is we as an ecosystem, we are starting to understand, the values and platforms and the values of scaling organizations and scaling data sets like G2. The power of the community of really coming together, and I think you've just built something really, really great at G2. One question I have is, have there been any kind of data horror stories that have impacted G2 over the years, whether it was from, a go-to market or something that the data was just wrong, and that led to something systemic? It's just something that we love to ask on this
Yeah, I mean,
series.
I would say, there hasn't been like one horrific event, but I think like a lot
Yeah.
of companies, sometimes like I think we're guilty of doing, let's say, bad BDR outreach, where sometimes like a customer will
Hmm.
forward me like a message and
Yeah.
it's way off base, you know, or
Yep. Yep.
sometimes, frankly, yeah,
It's a
some of our
common
team
one.
can be too aggressive. You know what I mean? Like, and I think you guys also have to be
Yep.
careful with buyer intent data, but where maybe they're too presumptive, where they say, "Oh, I saw you shopping. I know you must be in the
Right.
market." Where I
Yeah.
personally think, and I do a lot of outreach myself. I like to consider myself the best BDR at G2. But and I think the
Nice.
key and what we try to teach our teams is to make it very personalized. Yes, maybe
Yeah.
like Jamie, let's say, what I mentioned earlier, maybe I do see ring lead lighting up, but that's probably not what I lead with. I'd probably say, hey, Jamie,
Right.
I see you've been a leader in our industry for a long time. We have a lot of common friends, and I
Right.
think we could help your business. Here's why. But I think, that's always the key in outreach is make it very personalized. So don't make it so
Right.
obvious that it's tied to the data. I think that's one mistake a lot of people
Yeah.
make. And I think the other big opportunity, frankly, also in B2B marketing that I see for all of us is, to really get as good as consumer marketing, let's say on Insta, or on Facebook. But I
Yeah.
think one example is like my family and I, we have 3 kids, but we all love to go skiing. And so right now
Hmm.
I'm getting a lot of, very targeted, like end of year clearance. Hey, here's an amazing ski
Nice.
jacket that would fit your daughter beautifully. In some ways, I think some people view it as
Yeah.
kooky, but it's so personalized, so in context
Yeah.
of what I as a consumer, my interests and what I'm shopping for anyway,
Right.
that probably like a lot of people, so often I wound up buying stuff from that Insta ad. And I think that's
Yep.
more, the standard we're aiming towards, because I talked about BDR outreach. But one interesting partnership we also have is with LinkedIn. And then
Yeah.
you can couple the buyer intent data with what LinkedIn calls matched audiences, and then you can do that same kind of very personalized advertising. And we could target you, Jamie, and let's say, hey, here's a peer sales leader talking about the amazing success they're having with account-based marketing powered by GT buyer intent, and it just
Yep.
happens to magically pop up when we know you're shopping. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is really relevant, right? And you want to engage with it. And that's really the standard we're aiming to meet.